Welcome to the Berkeley Hotel. We're here in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Something I'm very excited about. Never really thought I would see the day. I'm Dan Whitener. I've been serving on the NERFA board for 3 years and recently stepped away to spend a little bit more time touring and raising my kid. But it's just a wonderful organization to work with, and these 3 years have really been some of the most pivotal and momentous in the organization's history. This is just one thing to point to be proud of, just the fact that we're able to come back and have our first in-person physical conference in a couple of years, having to cancel, and then a great pivot to doing the virtual thing, which shout out to everybody involved. I guess I'll pat myself on the back there too. The virtual thing was great, but you can't beat in person, and I'm biased because I live in New Jersey, but you really can't beat New Jersey as a music state. And when it comes to Asbury Park, it's just a place with a whole lot of history, a lot of folk music history. We've got such great venues here. We've got the freaky looking clown from Nick's Wonder Bar just down the way, and the fabulous Stone Pony as well. So it's just a great place for folks to come and play our kind of music, play folk music. It's wonderfully central to our region, I think, and immensely accessible. So folks from as far south as DC and as far north as the Maritimes and beyond should be able to get here without too much trouble, depending on whether there's beach traffic. But since it's November, I don't think that'll be a problem. So please come on down, folks. I'm so very excited to meet you here and show you everything that New Jersey has to offer, and NERFA.
Hi, I'm Heather Aubrey Lloyd. I'm part of the band Illy Amy and also a solo performer, and I am part of the NERFA community, which is why I am so excited to gather this incredible group of, happens to be women, very knowledgeable in grant writing, extremely accomplished, and willing to share all of their secrets with you. So I'm going to bring AJ Kiernan, Maureen Andary, and Kathleen Huber out for you. I'm going to moderate this panel on grant writing because I don't know anything about grants, but here's a whole bunch of people who do. I'd like to introduce you to AJ Kiernan.
Hi. Hi, my name's AJ. I'm actually part of the Mass Cultural Council in my area. I've written a lot of grants for myself and for other people, and I'm on the infrastructure committee of NERFA. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'd like to go to the next one in our, little fantastic bubble of knowledgeable people and bring up Kathleen Huber.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Huber. I'm the chair of the Edwards Arts Council in Edwards, New York. We oversee programming in the Edwards Opera House, which is a fabulous old building. I am a new grant writer and winner. I've gotten 5 grants now in the last 3 years, and have a lot to share about what I've learned.
Thank you so much. And then last but definitely not least, Maureen Andary.
Hi, my name is Maureen Andary. I'm a native Washingtonian, and I still live in Washington, D.C., and I have a duo called The Sweater Set, and we have received over $50,000 in grant funding over the last, 16 years. From the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. So most of my experience is with government funding. So I'm excited to share what I've learned. And I was an artist in residence at Strathmore, which is a performing arts center in Bethesda, and they are also the beneficiaries of a lot of government funding. And I teach a grants workshop at Strathmore for their artist in residence program.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I am beyond excited to gather this group together because not only are you savvy at getting grants, you've also seen both sides of this. You are artists, you are workers and shakers and movers in your communities who didn't just go, let me get money for myself, but also saw opportunities for the communities. And so we're going to talk about it from both sides. But I think a lot of people are going to be coming at this like me, who have never done this, who find it a little bit intimidating. And maybe how you started that first one. Let's talk about the first one you ever applied to. And we'll go backwards. All right, Maureen, do you remember the first one? Because you said like a while ago. Do you remember the first?
Yes, absolutely. So I was 24 and I was newly sober, which isn't necessarily relevant to this story, but I was like figuring my life out, you know, and I was newly sober. I'm now like, I don't know, almost 15 years sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I was just kind of like, I had been, you know, too busy partying to really like get into something like this. You know, it's very administrative. And I came to my mom and I said, I want to finally put out an album. I have the bandwidth to do it. Can you lend me, you know, $3,000 to, you know, duplicate it and, you know, roll it out? And she said, no, absolutely not. And I was like, but you have the money, Mom. And she was like, yeah, but I don't think I would be really helping you if I just gave you the money. So I want to encourage you to look outside of yourself and look outside of our family and find someone else to fund this for you. And she said, because you will get invaluable relationships and get your name out there more if you reach outside and try to find support. So I was like, well, what do you mean? And she was like, well, I don't know, just Google things like grants for women or, you know, whatever. So I thought about myself and I thought, well, what makes me unique? What makes me special that I would get a grant? And I'm very proud of being a Washingtonian. I'm a third generation Washingtonian from DC. I don't know why I'm proud of it because we don't have representation in Congress, but so I realized, oh, well, that makes me unique because there's a very limited number of district residents and Washingtonians. So I Googled like arts grants for Washingtonians or arts grants for DC residents. And I found the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, which I had no idea what that was. And I quickly found out that there was a program, it no longer exists, unfortunately, but it was called the Young Artist Program. And it was project-based grants for up to $3,500 in either for individual projects or for educational projects. And so I thought, well, this is perfect. And actually, I think for the individual projects, it was the max was $2,500, and for the education, $3,500. So I immediately set to work. They had extended the deadline because they had extra funding. So they did a second round. And normally the deadlines are in May or June, but this one was in February because they had extra funding because so few people had applied, which is something we see sometimes. So I just put together I submitted some recordings and I updated my resume and I created a timeline and a budget. And then I went in for an in-person audition and I ended up being awarded the full amount to duplicate. And also because I got to audition, I had the opportunity to perform in front of a bunch of arts administrators in the district and like other artists and people who produce things. And I ended up getting booked for a couple of gigs through that experience and just kind of getting my name out there, and I got some new fans that way. So it was an incredible experience, and I continued to apply every year. I think there's only been 1 year where I didn't apply, and for personal reasons, and it's just been an amazing experience. And that was the first one. I ended up doing an education grant the next year, and you know, I have a lot to share about grants, and I'm really excited to share this because it can take you in some directions you just never anticipated. And I'm really excited about that. So thanks for having me.
Hey, and that's an extremely powerful first story. Also, that there are opportunities that arise from putting yourself out there in the first place that might be different than even just the grant itself. Because maybe you wouldn't have gotten the grant, but the opportunity to perform might have been there too. So even though you were successful, it offers other options as well. And I also like your story of having to become this kind of more administratively minded person, you know?
Well, and the thing, my mom is smart. She has an MBA. So I benefited from somebody who really had a full picture idea of business and the world. So that was great. So I have to thank my mom for that. But the other thing is, if I hadn't gotten the money, I would have at least walked away with a plan, a budget, a timeline, a vision. And I didn't have that before. So, and then the other thing is, I still had that audition. So those connections were still made. So it's always valuable. The process is as valuable as the money.
That right there is an extremely awesome point. And I think we're going to move on. Let me go down to AJ. AJ, talk about your first grant experience.
Oh gosh. I was thinking about it. I was probably around, let's see, I guess I was more of the recipient of grants than someone who had to apply. I was working for an after school program when I was like 20 years old in New Hampshire. And I was fresh back in the state. I had spent some time in Texas with family, and I came back and sort of dove into theater and into music. There was a little cafe out in New Hampshire called the Sad Cafe, which no longer exists, sadly, but it was there for a long time. And I think everybody and their mother has played there. And I used to do work there. And the program itself, all of the after school programs were funded through grant money through the state. And I remember going to these meetings and going, I don't understand what they're talking about, but this sounds like free money to me. And since I have like 3 bands and my own theater projects, I better look into it. So then I moved to Western Mass, and I was in a very heavily involved band back then. And I started looking online, and actually a friend of mine mentioned that back in the day, her husband used to tour, and she showed me this little paper application of a Mass Cultural Council grant. And, said, well, what we used to do, I don't know if it's still the same, is we would fill the information out, and then you would submit a sample budget. So you just talk about what you need to pay for. You can't use it for food, you can't use it for certain things. And that's an important point. Every grant has different stipulations depending on what state you're in. So you always want to read the fine print, as annoying as that is. It's very true. It is an administrative position. But I looked at it, I practiced filling it out, and then I said, what the heck? So I started asking around town and saying, well, who do I talk to? This was before the Mass Cultural Council that I'm on now had like a really fleshed out website. So I was talking to town officials and saying, who do I talk to? They're like, you want to talk to the local cultural council? Well, who is that? And so it became like a phone tree operation of just talking to different towns. There are so many different facets. Not all are created equal, but the bottom line is I actually ended up sitting down with a librarian who saved my skin. I loved her. And to this day, the Miriam Gilbert Library in West Brookfield, Marianne, she's like still helping people fill out grants to this day. She's a wonderful person. She kind of sat down and went over everything. I remember the librarian I was with and helped me fill it out because they did it every single year for all of their projects, for music, for puppetry, for readers, like the children's storytime circles. All of it was state funded. And so I kind of learned the XYZ of how to fill it out. And I spent the last few years doing that. And then right after COVID, when the LCC, Local Cultural Council, kind of reached out and said, oh my gosh, like we need to rebuild. We have thousands of dollars and it's going nowhere. And we've been at a dead stop. I said, well, why not me? And I just took the chance and I reached out and I applied, and now here I am up to my neck in applications. And I actually kind of love it because I spend a lot of time just talking to people about what they should do who otherwise have felt like I did, very helpless. And they're not going to have to jump through quite as many hoops because there are people like us involved. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Now you have like a slogan even, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much. I walk up to people and go, oh, are you looking for state money? I think I said that to the window guy because he mentioned he was an actor. I sent it to 2 of my voice students. I sent it to somebody that came to my last concert. I've been saying it at my open mic every Friday. So we're really trying to get the word out there that there is a lot of opportunity, particularly in Massachusetts where I'm located right now, but all over. There's so much opportunity, and it's just waiting to be grabbed.
Nice. And thank you for being so willing to sort of share your knowledge with others. I think people worry that this is like a very protected, these are my personal secrets thing. And most people who've done the grant thing really do want to share. On that note, I'm going to go down to Kathleen. Kathleen, can you talk a little bit about your first grant experience?
Sure. My actual first grant experience was in 2010, and it had nothing to do with the arts. It had to do with a Smithsonian institution program, and I wrote the grant with my daughter in mind as a summer job, and together we created a website based on the historical aspects of a scientist there. And that was such an important job for me because I understood the administrative aspects of it. I understood basically it's an accounting thing. You say first of all, you follow the directions, then you follow what you said you're going to do, and then the reporting of it. So it was a fantastic opening into the grant writing and what it means and how you have to do all of it. And it was a big job, and anyone who's done it knows that it's a big job. And yet, in a way, it did feel like easy money. Right? You were in charge of the whole process. And as long as you followed the rules, you were sort of, in good stead. My first arts grant, though, was in 2018. I was working with a duo, and it was my duo partner lived in Arlington County, had a program. And because she lived there, I wrote the grant, and she gave us the credibility for it. And that was our first arts grant, which was pretty amazing. I mean, when you're writing for yourself and the advancement of yourself, it's a whole different ballgame. And I found it to be terrifying and yet brilliant at the same time. So and since then I've won, I think 4 or 5 more after that. So it's a fantastic opportunity for artists.
Nice. So to branch off, since the other two mentioned, did you have anybody in the initial process who gave you kind of guidance on how or where to find?
So the first one for me was not the Smithsonian, but getting to the arts grants, I absolutely did. And what I had was someone who was on a panel in the past, and I was aware that she was on that panel, and I spoke with her ahead of time, and I said, this is what I'm planning to do. This is my sort of the blurb for the project. And she asked me a lot of questions about it. And then she just said, this sounds really sound, because this is how the panel will go about it. They'll ask a lot of questions. Is she making sense? Does the project hold water? Does it make sense with regard to what the rules were? So I did have an insider. It wasn't inside at that time, but I had an information.
When you say panel, because that's immediately something that I go, I don't know what you mean. Is it the panel that
evaluate all the applications are evaluated generally by a panel. I mean, I don't know if that's true for AJ as well, but that's what I've discovered. Yeah.
Okay. So the cool thing is that each one of you had at one point in time someone you could go to either guide you through the process or give you some information. And those people were everybody from librarians to people with a business background to people who actually had sat on the grant panels themselves that then judged. So there's aid definitely in finding somebody in the background to help you out. And you don't have to raise your hand.
Okay. No, I just wanted to also chime in. And I mean, this is true for all arts grants, whether they're private organizations, public organizations, nonprofit organizations, for-profit. There are grants officers who are employed by all of these, by the government, by the companies that do private grants. And their entire job is just to help you get the money. And so it's like a very friendly relationship. And so when I was 24, there was a woman named Sherry Schwechten who is no longer with the DC Commission, but she was so kind and always available. And the grants officers that work for the organizations, they don't decide whether you get the money because they're not on the panel. Just like, just like we were saying, it's a panel that decides. And so they're a third party, and they're willing to proofread your application, edit your application, they're willing to tell you what to do to make it stronger for free. And so they're an enormous asset. But the thing is to utilize the grant manager as an advisor. You have to be organized and you have to send them your things well in advance because they get overwhelmed. So like if the grant's due the next day, you can't send them your application and say, can you proofread this? Because they're really busy. So it really pays big time to be organized. And I say this, do as I say, not as I do, because I'm not particularly strong at getting things in advance. But those people are there. And if you use Google or if you look on their websites, you will find them easily. They're called grants officers, grants managers. That's their title.
And how did you get hooked up with that person in that instance?
Well, I saw the grant on the website that I qualified for, and I just emailed her because she was managing that program. So there are specific officers that are assigned to whatever program you're looking at. And so you can just email them or call them and they'll get right back to you. You can meet with them in person, usually, and it wouldn't be out of line to contact the organization that you're interested in and say, I don't know what I qualify for. Can I schedule a meeting with somebody and we can talk about the opportunities? Because their entire job description is literally to find people to apply for these grants, because the more people that apply, the better for the organization. And so that's literally that's their main job description. So, so use that.
So if somebody's just starting, for example, let's talk about that. I have decided I'm going to do this. What's the first thing I should do? And I open this again. You do not need to raise your hands or anything.
I would say reach out to your town, go to your town website, see if there's a town accountant, because if there's state money going to your town for any kind of cultural event, no matter what state you're in, they are going to know who they're signing the checks to and who is reaching out and saying, hey, I have to approve this. We're reimbursing them. They just did an awesome concert on the Common here, $500, whatever it is. They will know who you're going to want to talk to. They'll say, oh, you want to talk to your local program officer or your local cultural council or the Musicians Relief Fund. I just reimbursed them last week for something. They will know the right people. And it does change. At least I know on my end, every 2 years they revote and the roles change consistently because it is, especially on a volunteer basis for us in Mass, every town we volunteer to serve. We are elected, but we volunteer for 2 years. And then if we get reelected, that's fine. But by my experience, there are different people to talk to every 2 years. So it's always good to just check in. Another really easy thing and a point that Maureen made was Google. Google's so easy. You can just look up grants in my area or grants for musicians or grants for artists. What cultural aspect are you going for? There is so much information right online, and you can literally just start a chain. Also, there's grant writing programs, really US wide. Google is going to serve you the best. And there are also programs, grant writing programs. There are a lot of them you can find for free, but there are some you can pay for. And I will say paying for it is worth it, where they'll help you format and keep track of all the grants you're applying for. So you can kind of have a basic program based off of what area you're going to be in, or is it going to run for a certain amount of time? Is it a residency? Is it a one-off? Is it a few shows over the summer or over the fall? And they'll organize it, and you can see what you've actually made so far for the year and say, oh, like DC grant, $1,000, Mass grant, $500. Ooh, the library fund, they're going to give me $200 to show up and do an hour talk. And it's a nice list. So that's very, very helpful.
Talk about that a little more specifically. So you say like grant program.
Yes, grant writing program. So rather than just hiring a grant writer, which I do recommend, there are plenty of grant writers out there, easy to find, and they work very reasonably, which usually it's a small percentage of what you're going to make. That can be in your budget, or you can pay them in advance and they'll help you format. There are also grant writing programs. So it is online programs specifically designed to help you format what you want to say, what your mission is, and kind of fine tune it, neaten it, like spell check and make it buttoned up and beautiful, enter your logos, enter your entire point. And then you can kind of use that to route to all of the grant programs that you're applying to and keep track via list of what it is you're actually making. You might have some that are pending. They'll still be in red or with a question mark. And then as soon as you've received the check, you can go, hey, I got it, boom. And you have a nice buttoned up, beautiful, organized, like Excel style spreadsheet showing you what you've actually already submitted for, what's already in. It's very helpful.
Do you have a preferred one that you use that you could do by name?
No, this year I've been doing everything new because I'm involved in a different aspect. So I'm going online and using Smart Simple a lot, which is the preferred Mass Cultural Council format, which is basically it's the same as what I would have used online. A lot of what I found, honestly, I couldn't name specifically because I've used so many different types depending on where I'm applying. I try to cater to the state that I'm applying in, and most of what I'm doing right now is Massachusetts-based because it's easier to start from home. Also, we just received something like $25 million for the state, and I think $2 million of that is being routed culturally. So I'm focusing on that.
Nice.
Yeah.
My other panelists, do you have any guides that you favor?
Well, I tend to write sequentially. I'm not writing many at the same time. So I tend to, I did this summer reach out to a lot of different people, private funding outside a grant thing, and I'm keeping my own spreadsheet, that kind of thing. I asked for private sponsors and that sort of thing for the Opera House, and that was very successful. So that's another option too. It's not simply just writing grants. You can write to, any kind of person or community that or organization that does sponsor events. But I don't use a program. I'm an editor by trade, so I don't really need to have that done for me. But I wouldn't just encourage anyone from using it, because that's probably a great idea, especially if you're doing multiple ones, because it's very hard to keep track of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Got it. Maureen, do you have anything in terms of how you keep track, or are there any programs or templates or things like that you use?
Well, I would say reach out to someone if you know someone like us who's received grant funding before. I'm sure if you reach out to us personally, we'd be happy to share some of our grant. I mean, I'd be happy, and I've done it before, shared some previous grant, because it is a particular style of writing, one that people are probably not familiar with. It's a lot more technical than creative. The style of writing isn't as artistic as us artists are used to. Like, the flowery language doesn't necessarily serve you. So it would be of you to ask someone who, like, can I see a grant application for a grant that you did win? And I would recommend, like, for fellowships, which fellowships are a style of grant where there's no project. It's just, I'm an awesome artist, fund me. And really all you need to read for that is an artist statement. So, like, you might want to Google artist statement, because you may have not written one before. In music, we're not used to that. If you are a visual artist, you're used to it, because that's part of art school. Like, you have, when you go to a painting exhibit and you walk around, there's like a summary of, like, what is this exhibit about? And that's what an artist statement is. So you might want to, you could just Google that, or you can also Google examples of grant applications, or ask a grants officer, can I see an example application? Also, every spring, I know that the DC Commission publishes a guide to grants, and it's like a 100-page thing where they go through every single program and what's the requirement for eligibility, and like what the application entails. And that's very helpful. So that's what I would recommend. Now, as far as staying organized, and I'm sure this will come up again, but Google Calendar is your friend. Email lists are your friend. Figure out what your town, your county, your state, the arts councils are, and like their Facebook pages, follow them on Instagram and Twitter, sign up for their email newsletters, and then you will get emails and notices about what grants are coming up and when they're due, because they promote them. They want more people to apply. And then also, if the date passed, because a lot of grants are due in like May or June in our area in the DMV. So what you do is look at what the date was due, and then put it for next year, like a month before. Check the DC Commission website, do Google Calendar reminders like a bunch of times, because they can't tell you the number of times people just forgot to apply. And that's so sad, because they probably could have gotten $5,000 or, something. And so Google Calendar is your friend, and social media is your friend, and email. Sign up for those emails.
Amen.
That's really useful. Here's again the no, I don't know anything question. How much time, let's say you're doing one, about how much time do you tend to spend or invest in start to finish a grant process?
I think that depends on what kind of project you're aiming for. If you are doing a smaller scale one where you're like, oh, I have a location, I'm going to use the local library, their local library committee has offered to serve as a venue, and I'm going to put together a little coffee house, like a one-off. I want to make sure everybody gets $100, so I'm going to say I want 500, so I can have 5 like songwriters in the round come, and I can give them each a little bit of money for their time, and that'll take care of it. That's a smaller project. You're probably going to want to look up whatever. You still have to look up the guidelines. Like you really, I'm going to sound like my mother right now. You need to read the fine print. The guidelines are so important. Every town has their own thing. In our town, you have to have a town location in order to receive funding from us. It's actually one of the things I'm trying to change about the grant approval for this year. But if you have a location in advance, that shaves off time. If you don't, that adds the time. So you could spend 20 minutes because you've been thinking about it. You've got it all, written out, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to use this simple form that my town has given me, fill it out piece by piece, answer a couple questions about why I need the budget I do, and then hit submit. Other places still use the paper form, and they want like the explanation, the artist statement, or if you were applying for a fellowship, they want to know specifically what goes along with that, what's involved, what's the fellowship for, what is your medium, how long have you been in it, why are you worth us funding? That is a much longer process. And again, I would have to agree with Maureen that you should reach out to a program officer at that point, or somebody that has an example for you to say, all right, well, I funded this fellowship last year. I can show you an example of one that was approved, so you can kind of see how it's formatted and what we're looking for. Or I actually keep a copy of the guidelines right with me, or I keep it like pinned. I keep like my URL pinned, so I'll text it to you right now, and you can read all about the FAQs. And there's a little example right on the page. There are so many different ways, but the biggest thing is kind of what I said before we started. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's the worst part. Speaking as somebody who can be very introverted, it can be very hard to ask questions. So having somebody that you feel comfortable with to talk to is key.
I'm going to back that up because it's, going back to, what's your first step? For me, it's always local. If you can get your local county, my township is too small for having that, but the county grants administrator was fabulous. Literally held my hand through the whole thing. And I got it to her early. She sent remarks back and I implemented them. She looked at it again and she said, looks great, submit. So from beginning to end for that one, it was about a week, and it wasn't full on either but again, I'm a writer. I don't have any problem with all that stuff. So that it really depends on what your own skill set is and where you need help. Right. But the local people is a great place to start, get your first grant locally. And then now I'm looking into bigger, wider ranging regional areas. But everything people have said here about the help you can get, 100%. It's just amazing what's available when you start to ask those questions.
Cool. And Kathleen, I want to stay with you for a minute because it popped something into my head about a question I've had, and I know more about witnessing the results of the grant from the series that I played at your opera house, which is this absolutely stunning, historic opera house in a very small town with kind of an underserved community. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit and then branch the conversation off about how do you, especially as someone working within your community or with a venue, how do you set yourself apart or perceive a need that then is the thing you can get that grant for? So talk a little
Yes.
about yours.
Yeah, so oddly, we have several historic opera houses in my area, and a handful of them are really high end. I mean, they're beautiful. Our opera house, our town, is like playing inside a guitar. It's wood everywhere, right? And it's simple, but it's beautiful. And so I knew I could not compete with the high end opera houses. So what could I do that's different? And I said live stream. Nobody's doing live stream, and everybody learned how to do it during pandemic, and there's an expectation. So that was what got my foot in the door, right? They're like, oh, that's different. And you're not trying to compete. You're adding something, you're not taking it away. And so that's what I mean, a lot of people were worried. We have a summer series where it's just, local bands and their friends and all this stuff. And I'm like, we can keep that. Let's just add to the programming. And that was the difference. So the venue, I think, having been there, it speaks for itself. And it's my goal to get as many people in that building as possible. And we have an underserved community in arts, but we also have an underserved community in the sense that they're not used to live music. They haven't had it. I mean, the last time this venue was full on, it was, almost like, medicine shows traveling through town, So, we're trying to build something that's a little different than what they've done. So it's always like, how can we make it? What's the twist we can put on it?
And I know what the venue looks like, but a lot of our viewers will not. So feel free in your glowing, editorial prose to talk about the venue.
Now or later?
Go ahead and talk about it now. Remember, it's going to get edited. If it doesn't fit now, it'll go where it goes.
I gotcha. So the building is part of the town hall. We have the upper floor of the town hall, which was built in 1896, and it's a fantastic building built with natural and local stone and all that. But in the upstairs, there's a twisting staircase that goes up, and as soon as you hit the top floor, it's built. Imagine an upside down ship. That's essentially what it looks like. You can see the ribs of the ship, and acoustically, it's beautiful. I mean, Heather knows you stand on the stage and you sing, and you can hear anywhere in this room, and it's just gorgeous. And for people who would like to see photos or different things, it's edwardsoperahouse.com. We've got a few things there. But we are building, and I'm actually now trying to find historic photos that I can build up, a gallery, because it's very hard for an acoustic room to share with your public what that means. What does it sound like with photographs, right? So, we're trying to get this live stream going. We're trying to get people who can hear it online. And I think we've had some good success there, but we're still building. So.
Right. And you saw this amazing venue that you had and thought to yourself, not only is the live stream a way to yes and, you decided that another way, because the grant that you got paid the artists that came in, and not an insubstantial amount of money, by the way, to be able to come up to a place where then you didn't necessarily have to guarantee a certain number of bodies for audience. Right. But what was so cool about your series is that the grant was predicated on certain requirements for serving the community, serving the artists you were going to have, and that beyond the live stream microphone to make sure it could be broadcast, it had to be completely acoustic.
That's right.
Well, so how did that all?
So I grew up in this town. I never saw the opera house. It was a storage facility when I was growing up. And when I came back, it had been operational since 2002. I moved back in 2021. And by that time, it had 20 years of operation, right? And so I see the place and I just thought, holy cow, this is like stepping back. And I was really drawn to the traveling troubadours. So when a traveling troupe came through, they would just say, hey, we've got a show. Can we use your place? They would say, yes, here, you usually stay here. We don't even have a hotel in town anymore. And so it was my idea to use it. I love the idea that you have venues that are built at the scale of the human voice, like old country churches and that kind of thing. They're gorgeous sound coming off the stage. And that was my choice to do that, because I wanted to show, well, I wanted to have a different thing for the grant, but I also wanted to show people who've been fully wired for 20 years that, hey, let's use this the way it was built. And the problem we found is, and I don't know, I can't remember, Heather, how you felt about this, but standing on that stage, did you feel like, oh, I don't sing like this. I'm singing with a microphone in my face. You know, a lot of the women were like, whoa, I can't do this. You know,
it was definitely intimidating because it's extremely naked. It's funny how much protection a single mic stand can provide.
Yeah.
But it was a beautiful thing. And you mentioned the other women who played there. Talk a little bit about that as well.
Well, I mean, we wanted more than anything to, the grant was awarded in part because we chose women. We chose an underserved artist community that, open mics are largely, or in the past have been largely men. And we wanted to find women who could do an hour's worth of original material with no covers. And that's another thing. A lot of people come in and they play cover bands, which is fine, but wasn't what I wanted. And these women, you among them, you included, were just amazing. They stood, I mean, these are people I knew primarily, but, you and I have never played together. I played with a handful of people that came up, and I was just so impressed with it. You know, their ability to handle that stage, call in the partner. I forget, Heather, were you had a partner, or were you there alone?
I brought in Ariel Girl Blue,
right,
who was relatively local.
Fabulous
3 hours
show.
away.
Yeah. But you guys worked really well together, and it was super awesome. Yeah. So we had 12 singer-songwriters come in 6 months, and it was a grind, but that was the rule. We had to be done by June. And so we pushed it. And
right. And if you don't mind my asking, what was the amount of that grant?
I asked for 3,000, I think, and I got 2,600, I think. I can't quite remember, but we paid each of these performers $500 to come, and because we knew they had to travel a long distance and they had to stay with me. So, because there's no hotel. So it was a bit of a different thing. And another reason why I wanted to invite people I knew, because who would want to do that necessarily, right? So it was just to get our foot in the door, and boy, what a difference it made, because then the Arts Council locally is like, hey, we know you and we like this, so let's keep going. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And so you decided, I'm going to have women singer-songwriters. I'm going to use the historic nature of the Opera House, but I'm going to take it old school and go acoustic and live stream it new school, yes, and provide the local audience with something they just haven't had. Let's talk a little bit about that novel thinking of what you have to offer. So, Maureen.
I just wanted there were a few things that Kathleen hit on that are so important. And one heralds back to what I was saying for my first grant. I thought hard about what makes me special or what makes me unique. And what Kathleen hit on is that women are underrepresented in music, except on this panel.
I love this panel.
And that is true. And so that, having an angle like that, we need to fund this because this is a community that needs support, is oftentimes what a lot of grant organizations are looking for. And if you're a woman in music, you are unique. So it is something worth supporting. And initially when I was Googling, that's what I was Googling. But then I figured out that if you go with your local grants organization, it really narrows the pool and helps you. Like, there's only a limited number of people in your town who are artists, and those are your competition. So, but anyway, so think about what makes you unique. And then the other thing is that she was sharing that after doing it once, even though, it wasn't the most amount of money, it was worth it just to become connected with the Arts Council. And that is so key. There's so much value in that. And one time I was rejected for a grant that I applied for. It was like a $10,000 grant. I was trying to do a ukulele flash mob at Eastern Market, which is like a famous, market in DC. And the reason I didn't get it is because even though I've taught group ukulele classes, and even though I'm a great teacher and I'm experienced as a teacher, I've never done a ukulele flash mob. And the grant program also included 3 free clinics that would be around that neighborhood to try to promote the ukulele, and the money was going to be used to buy ukuleles and give people ukuleles, give them away. But I've never done any of those things. I've never done a clinic, I've never done a flash mob. And so they were like, well, even though this woman has a good track record and she gets credit for that, she's never done any of this, so we're not going to give her the money. And so you're more likely to get funding if it's something you've already done, which I hate to tell people to go do things for free, but that's just the way it is if you're an artist. But, if you want to start an open mic and you want funding for it, start the open mic, just do it for a few months and record things or take pictures. And then you can submit it with your grant application and say, look, this is a successful open mic and we need support. And then you can get funding for the open mic. I've seen open mics get funding. So those two things that Kathleen mentioned are really key.
No, and that's brilliant. I think also you bringing up the point about documentation. You do all these things. We keep everything is content. Everything is content. Don't forget to film it. You're doing amazing things, and you don't even realize the way they might add up later for proof of your ability to do this sort of stuff successfully. So that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that at all. AJ, in the grants and stuff that you've done, have there been any instances or that kind of novel thinking? It's like, how do I set myself apart?
Well, actually, the point you guys were just making was very key to me, because that's part of why I live stream. I actually host an open mic every Friday, and it's going to be a year old. This particular one will be a year old at the end of September. And we have sometimes more listeners that come every week just to take part in this than we have players, but the jams are really great. It's really like a big family at this point. And so many people from all over the state hear about it, and they'll just pop in and say, no, I heard about this from so-and-so. And I'm like, how? I stream it on Insta every week. And then my brother edits together videos at his studio, and he puts them out on Facebook, and he shoots them off to everybody. And it's really become just this kind of cool local artists hunt. And I think part of that is being willing to show up. And I have a saying that I heard actually in the real estate world that I use now, which is never burn any bridges. That free work does come in handy. You're absolutely right about that. But you will learn more about what you can and can't do by helping other people accomplish what they're trying to do. I've helped out with grant programs. I've volunteered on a lot of boards. I've helped people fill out paper. I've even helped people just with their taxes, so I could have the conversation with them and then get involved in what they're doing. It really is about connection. It is so important to just nurture that community vibe. And part of what I'm doing this year is I'm applying for grant money for the open mic, because I do have a year of proof. I've live streamed everything. You can watch every single show. You can see videos. And the venue's been super supportive. They're actually donating to NERFA this year. I just filmed there on the day that they were closed. We're submitting for the Northampton Open Media. They are grant funded, and they're putting together this massive film project, which is based off of Star Wars. And every single little media company is picking scenes from the movie and filming their own piece of it. And it's being put together. And then in October, that's actually premiering at the Academy of Music. So I was just there filming a puppet version of that, like last weekend at the same venue. And just getting to know that these people over the last year has been amazing. And I got involved with that, going to see another musician play, supporting his open mic that was there before he left the country. And he just turned around, and after 3 conversations was like, you're so supportive. I want you to take this over. And it's one of the best things I could have done. And that was just by being there, just by showing up, by being supportive of other artists in your community, by giving the time where you can give. That's an excellent point. I heartily agree with. The community is the key to everything.
I would also say she's already admitted that she's an introvert. Many of us are. And it's hard, right? It's hard to make that step. But as artists, this is what we must do, I think. And, I would not have predicted 5 years ago that I'd be doing this kind of stuff, right? But it became essential for me if I wanted to, grow in this direction. And when I fell in love with this venue, I was like, oh, I must, because I can't do this. I can't support it. I have to get grant money, right? So you put yourself out there in ways that are just maybe not comfortable, but essential.
Nice.
That's a beautiful thing too, and amazing points to you for doing it.
So I wanted to jump into with the novelty factor. So, and this is less about you positioning yourself in a novel way and more the way that the grants might challenge you in novel ways. So interesting. One thing I want to share about the district is that we have the most money per capita for artists in the country. And the reason is because we're not a state, but we're not part of any state. And so the National Endowment of the Arts gives us a way bigger budget than we should get because we're a city. But we get a really, we get a budget of a small state. So they treat us like a state. So we have a lot of money. And the cool thing is that sometimes there's so much money that they figure out last minute grant programs and ideas. And one year, about 7 years ago, I don't know if they do it anymore, they had a bunch of leftover money. I mean, we're talking like $300,000.
Because they have to get rid of that stuff, right? There's
or
usually
else they have to give it back.
Right.
So someone there dreamed up a program called the Sister Cities Grant, where every city, every town has sister cities in the globe. It's like a diplomatic program. And in DC, we're connected to a lot of capital cities because we're the capital of the US. So they said, we'll give individuals up to $20,000 to collaborate with an artist in one of our sister cities. And it could involve you going to that city and collaborating or bringing them back or both. And I applied and they loved my grant. I was trying to collaborate with a bass player in Rome and who we knew. And we would have gotten the money. Our panel in DC approved it. But what happened was Italy was like, we can't handle anything because we're a mess because there's civil unrest in our city. So Rome just rejected everybody who applied to do work there. But one of my friends, Chris Dallas-Bacon, who's a Grammy Award nominated beatboxer and hip hop artist, he applied for a grant to go to Brasilia, Brazil, which is the capital of Brazil. And he he likes Brazilian music. He had, he plays guitar and he had been backing up a Brazilian singer, just doing some bossa nova and such around town, but it wasn't his focus. He is a hip hop artist, but he just had an interest. And because of this grant, he said, oh, great. Okay, well, I'll just find someone in Brasilia and apply. And he got the full amount, 20 grand. And he flew to Brasilia and he sat in all these jams, learned a lot more about Brazilian music. And then he got it again the next year. And he went down there and filmed a documentary and then brought the artist back for a concert. And, he's now a really proficient bossa nova player and collaborates with all these amazing Brazilian musicians. And literally, had this grant program not existed, those relationships wouldn't exist. There's no way he would have gone there and done this. But sometimes you have to let the program define what you do next because the opportunity is just too good. And so it'll push you in some interesting ways. So I love that program. I don't know if it's still around. It's kind of been in and out over the years. And the last thing I'll share just for everybody who's listening to this, if you have a friend who lives in the District of Columbia and they have to live in the District of Columbia, they can't be in Maryland or Virginia. If you have a friend who's an artist in the District of Columbia, you can get money from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities if you collaborate with them. So you don't qualify for the fellowships, which honestly is the best part about living in DC because the fellowships are just for an individual, but you do qualify to collaborate on a project-based grant. So there are these community arts programs, sister cities grants, even any of those kind of grants, $10,000, $20,000 project grants. As long as 51% of the activities occur in the district, you can be a part of that project. You'd be a paid artist. And the money could go towards your travel expenses. It could go towards your performance fee. It could go, so as long as most of it's happening in the district, it doesn't even all have to happen in the district. It could be paying you to do a recording in your hometown and whatever. So I just want to put that out there. That's it.
It's a very important point. The collaboration with, if you don't qualify for any grant program, collaborating with someone who does that's what I did on my first arts grant. And it it really, I mean, truly, the first one is the hardest. And then you're like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. Right.
Well,
Absolutely.
and then things that organizations qualify for, but individuals don't, approach an organization and say, hey, you qualify for this program. I'd love to work with you on it. And then you can pay yourself through the grant and work with them as what's called a fiduciary.
Awesome. So you guys popped like 3 things into my head that we'll address in some version of an order. One, want to talk about maybe like the bank of materials that you kind of want to have in the background to be prepared for these applications when they come up. 2, want to talk about what I've seen generally as an increase in opportunity in the COVID, post-COVID arena a lot. Seems like there's a lot more in Montgomery County in Maryland. They're giving away, I think, the most artist grant money they've ever given away. Well, I thought that whole pocket of everything you guys just talked about with that is gold, because man, I wouldn't have thought or known about that at all. And then I'm going to let you run wild a bit, and again, whatever pops up, if it's worth spending some time on. So again, a very technical, actionable thing. What's the kind of stuff you should have like in your bank of content and like written artist statements and stuff like that you should just kind of keep a file on, on your computer, a folder of, stuff that you're probably going to dip into frequently as you do these types of applications?
Definitely photo evidence, small video clips, YouTube links of existing programs or things that you may have been funded for previously. That's huge, because they'll say, oh, hey, this county funded them for this. This looks great. Ooh, check this out. Look at that audience. Wow, they look really culturally engaged. We totally want to fund you. Keep that handy. Absolutely. Any kind of video or photo evidence of what you do and what you were planning to do is key. That's what I love my brother for that, because I work with him out of Bowtie Studios and he is like Mr. AV. I, as you can tell, am on a phone and not Miss AV. I'm not proficient in the live stream. Every good live stream I've done, every good video presentation, he's been a part of it. If you can also keep really good AV people in your back pocket who you know, or who you can say, I really need to put this together. Can I put you on as part of the budget for this? And say, I needed you for promotional help, materials. They're probably going to provide video later that you can use for next year's grant. Keep somebody like that in your back pocket. But the way that you phrased that, Heather, was exactly how it should be. Keep a little folder. Keep it on a flash drive. Keep it on a notepad. Keep it on your phone. Like, keep that little file of, here's my photos, here's my videos, here's my program outline that I've already written down, and this is kind of what I really want to do. This is like the meat and potatoes of what I want to achieve. Just keep it all right there so you can literally go click, open. And if you have to talk to somebody like a program officer or a panel who is reviewing whether or not you should receive funding, you can just go click. Well, actually, I'm really glad you asked me about that, because the objective of this program is actually, and you're reading from your computer, which is sitting right here like I do the entire time we're talking. It really does help. So that was just, to me at least, that was the perfect way to phrase it. Keep a little file right on your desktop. Keep that little folder handy. That's 90% of your game right there. I think it's just be prepared.
Anything you guys want to add? Other things you keep around, to be sure you have it for these types of applications?
One thing that you might want, you may have to actually supply these things, because when you have a project-based grant, you have to do a final report and prove that you spent the money how you were supposed to. So you have to keep receipts. Mm-hmm. You have to keep, if you pay someone their performance fee via venue, include a screenshot of that. You're also it's gonna be nice for you to submit pictures or proof that the event happened, maybe a copy of a program. If you perform at like a great venue and there's a program, which is very fancy, definitely keep that and scan it. That would be a nice supplemental material for a fellowship application, just to prove that you're really legit or things like that. But also for the just don't, you want to, before the events happen for a project-based grant, make sure that you understand what you need to provide, at the end when you do that final report.
That's actually about to be my next question, because this is going to be really important. So it's not, here's your money and yay, and you disappear forever. One, you guys have mentioned criteria specific that has to be met in the grant itself, in the execution of it, and ways you need to show them what you did. Talk about specific examples of that kind of stuff and that idea of the follow-up.
So I'll start because I just finished a report. So it's really grant specific what they're asking for. They're very clear. And in both the two cases where I finished with the county where I'm at now, very specifically, here's what you need in the report, here's how you need to do it and everything. And in fact, even gave us a spreadsheet we needed to use for budgeting. So that was great. But I kept my own spreadsheet because I don't account the way they account. So anyway, it was, I was hyper attentive to making sure that I got all that reporting right, because that means I can get another grant, right? Like if you do a shoddy report, they're going to like, yeah, we'll give it to somebody else, right? So it's all about following the rules, but it is, it's a really big deal to make sure that as it's going, you're tracking all this stuff. Do not wait until the end because, well, depending on how long it is, but in my case, it was 6 months and a lot of moving parts. So anyway, the reporting is huge.
Agreed. And Massachusetts, I've noticed they have, I think I briefly touched on this, like a smart, simple form where everything is online now. You can submit like your reimbursement forms to a physical person if that's what you're used to doing, but we're going to put almost everything you do online. And when you actually apply for a grant through the Mass Cultural Council, you fill out the form, they ask all the important questions, they actually will list the guidelines of you have to meet this criteria, you have to serve this group of people, you have to present this kind of cultural benefit to our community. And they actually will ask you as you're filling it out, do you even meet these criteria? And they won't let you continue on to the next page unless you're sure that you have dotted the I's and crossed the T's and you meet those criteria. They also provide a budgeting worksheet where you can give them the simple version before the application is submitted of what your budget is. Then when you finally hit submit, that's when they're going to say, I want the receipts, I want to see proof, and it will be uploading PDFs. Again, it can be as simple as just a phone, like, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this and clean it up and just submit it. It doesn't have to be a very neat Adobe Photoshop PDF that's clear. We just want proof that you paid the right people.
I will also want to jump in and say that don't be afraid of this because they're very flexible. Like when you submit your application, the budget is just a projected budget with estimates, and it never is exactly what you said it was going to be. Things shift. And what my bandmate and I have always done is that we just adjust our performance fee as needed. So like if our cost for duplication or mastering was less than we thought, we just increase our performance fee by $70 or something. Or whatever it is. And so our performance fees always end up being these strange numbers, you know, like instead of 700, it's 706 or something, just so it all adds up. But that's okay. That works for them. It's really flexible. And then when COVID happened, one of our projects was in the works and we had to shift from a in-person event to a virtual event. And so we didn't have to pay the $2,000 rental fee for the venue. We were going to have it at Mansion on O Street, Heather. I'm not sure if you've been there. I'm so bummed we didn't play there, but we shifted all that location fee. We did a $500 donation to the venue. And then we did, gave more people money, the performers more money, and they approved that. It was really easy. We just wrote a summary and sent it to our grants officer. So don't be afraid. It's very flexible. You just communicate it's a friendly thing. Everybody wants everyone to do well. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is, and this is separate thought, but I want to encourage anybody who's out there listening to this to volunteer to be on a panel. You can do that. You qualify, and you even qualify in DC at least. We have panelists who live in New York City or live in, Virginia, just who want to be a part of it. You don't have to live in the jurisdiction that you're a panel on, although it helps if you live in the jurisdiction because then you can take what you learn on that panel and apply it to your grants. You can even be on a panel for a grant that you applied for. They don't love it, but you can. You just leave the room when they discuss your application. But you will learn so much. You will become best friends with all of those people on your panel because it's like jury duty, but the arts. And you're there for 3 days till you have to keep coming till it's over. They provide you lunch. you're in a room with these people, and some of them are directors of, I did one, and I was with the executive director of the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop, and I met all these different people, administrators, and on top of it, the best part of all is I learned so much more about my city, because I was assigned 10 arts organizations and ensembles to evaluate, and I had to listen to all their art and their music, and I had to read their applications, and it was revelatory. I learned so much about my city. I was so proud. There's so much more art and music going on in this town than I even realized. There was so much value. It's really hard to even quantify the value of being on a panel, and that's something you can do tomorrow. They need your help. It's an act of service.
It's important, and I think we benefit from it. Is like peer review. You should do your duty, and in fact, I'm serving on the panel this fall because I've just won some grants. So I'm like, okay, I'm up, I'm doing it, and I haven't yet had the experience, but I can imagine. And I want to say one other thing about this, and then I'll stop. But we were awarded a grant last fall, but we weren't funded. We ran out of money before it came to us. And so they said, here's what's left. I asked for 5,000 and I got 300. And I said, thank you, but I can't meet the needs of this grant with 300. So I want to grant it back. And what came out of that was this long thing about two things. Somebody on the panel didn't like my application. And so there was a little bit of scuttlebutt, and I didn't learn about it until later. But the point is, don't be discouraged if you don't score as much as you would to be funded. Just keep moving, because you learn all the time. And what happened for me in that case was I had other opportunities come up for funding that filled in behind. So, but it was a little bit of a surprise to me. But anyway, being on a panel, I expect I'll learn a lot more about this.
And you can always ask. So everybody writes their feedback on these assessment sheets usually, and you are entitled to those.
And I got it.
Yeah. And so you can ask your grant manager, hey, I want feedback. Give me the feedback sheets, and they'll give it to you.
They did, and it was terrific, and it was great, because not knowing why I didn't get the score, she just said, listen, there was this person who's very vocal and was just thinking I was trying to, what did they say? Oh, they're just wanting to get all the expenses paid. And the administrator said, no, she's following the rules. She even told me this. So, but anyway, it's fine. It all worked out, but it's an education, all of it.
Nice. All right. I got like two things I want to hit, and then I want to make sure we sort of like clean up any of the stuff at the ends. We give you opportunities to talk about yourselves, all that good stuff. I want to really briefly talk about your opinions on the amount of opportunity that exists, again, in that like COVID, post-COVID, as it relates to grants and stuff like that. So just a real quick kind of like your perception on the availability of opportunity now.
Oh, it's huge right now. It really is. One of the websites I actually put in the chat, which hopefully will get thrown up there, it was NEMRF.org, particularly in the Northeast right now. It's the New England Musicians Relief Fund. They actually were founded in 2020 because of COVID, and it's to help people in the creative sector, musicians in particular, that have a dire need. So you can, their form is really simple. You literally go online, say, I'm interested in applying. It's a quick questionnaire, and then someone reaches out to you directly, one of their program officers, and says, here's what I need you to do. Here's all the information. And then, you could get anywhere from $500 to, I think 1 year I got $1,000, which really helped me when I was sort of at my lowest point, being a full-time musician in COVID, having an illness on top of it. There was a lot going on. And so that $1,000 really just kind of kept me going, and so that I was able to keep showing up and doing my job as a musician during a really tough time for everyone. So that's huge, and I encourage anyone in the Northeast to check it out, because they are still available today. Also, there are specific COVID relief grants through the Massachusetts Cultural Council right now. So if you're looking to do programming in Massachusetts or you're a resident, you can get up to $5,000 per gig worker or individual artist, as a way to offset the effects of COVID and what they might have done to you. And if you are an organization, you can apply for up to $75,000. And actually, NEMRF.org right now is providing a direct link to that particular grant as well on their website. So you can actually go to massculturalcouncil.org or nemrf.org and find information about both.
I'm going to tag in Maureen, because Maureen, you've got a couple that you posted.
Yes, and also to follow what AJ said, the COVID-related grants tend to be a lot less restrictive, or they have a lot less requirements, and there's almost no reporting requirements. They kind of just accept that this is a hard time for artists, and they're getting all this money from the federal government and the relief acts and stuff. So I just shared the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities website. It's dcarts.dc.gov. And then I also shared the Mid-Atlantic Arts Organization. That's actually so DC Arts is a government organization, but Mid-Atlantic Arts is a nonprofit that is that has grants for artists throughout the Mid-Atlantic. So a lot of NERFA members would qualify for this. So I'm going to share. I think that, the DC Arts ones, if you live in DC, great. If you have friends in DC, still worth it to take a look and see what's out there. And then with Mid-Atlantic, I would go through and see what they have available and put reminders in my calendar. And if you miss the deadline, just put reminders for next year, a month before that deadline, and you might actually get something.
Yeah. And I'll just piggyback on that and saying that the ARP, American Rescue Plan, administered through National Endowment for the Arts, were the last two grants that I won, one for myself and one for the Opera House. And but it was administered, it was given through the county. So I just keep going local, local, local. If you're new to this, figure out the local connection, find your grants administrator and see if there are any that are currently open, because the COVID funds were great for artists. And I love the fact that there's not as strict reporting. Not that that's like impossible. It just makes it easier as an artist to do your work. So,
guys, you are amazing. I want people to know how amazing you are. So, AJ, can you introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about what you've been up to lately, or what we can look forward to from you.
Well, other than grant writing, most recently, I'm actually about to start fundraising for my own album. I have a band called Water Bear, all caps. There are a lot of Water Bears out there, but ours is the loudest. No, just kidding. All caps just makes it easier to find. And you can go to waterbeartheband.com and you can stream our album and you can see where we're going to be. We put our whole schedule on the front page. And actually, my brother, who is my bandmate, Dave Herrera, he also live streams, helps me live stream, and he's just an incredible partner. He's actively teaching with me as well. We've also been working with Hole in the Wall Studio, that's out of my home, where I teach voice lessons. You can find that right on Google. And then the other thing is one that is my baby, which is my house concert series. I absolutely love being part of the folk and the music community. So about 7 years ago, when I bought my property in West Warren, Mass, I started doing 4 concerts a year, and I have different artists from all over. This year so far, I've been lucky enough to have Rupert Waits come through, which my band got to open for him. I totally geeked out about that. Came from NYC, and it was a phenomenal first show of the season. And now we're going to have Sean Taylor and Lisa Bastoni here next weekend. And then this October, we're doing our 2nd annual Harvest and Hearth Festival, which we do every year. And I encourage any musician I know to reach out to me if you're interested in playing. I pay you. I put out a spread. We have local wine and beer. And it's outdoors under a fully rainproof tented area with a live in-house sound person and just a very, very excited listening audience. And everyone that comes here, they hear the same slogan and they leave feeling it, which is we say, welcome to Chapel Apple House, welcome home, because that's how we want you to feel. It is a wonderfully stripped down venue, and I encourage everyone to check that out. It's just facebook.com/Chapel Apple House. We are the only one.
Nice. I love that. Oh, Kathleen, it's been a long time since I've seen you, and you have been busy. What's going on?
Right. So as you know, I moved from DC and I'm in my hometown in Northern New York, and I have been elected the chair of the Edwards Arts Council, which oversees programming in the Edwards Opera House, which is a historic fascinating opera house in Edwards, New York. And so in the early years, it was very active, and it has been active for the last 20 years, but pandemic really hit hard. So my current reality is bringing that back online as best we can with local bands that she's always done in the summer, but also now live streaming. And we brought that on with singer-songwriters, this first series that you were a part of, Heather, and we're very excited to build that. And our main event for the year is bringing in Dar Williams, September 17th. She'll be visiting our town. She'll be doing a book signing. Her book comes out in September 6th. She's doing a book signing, How to Write a Song That Matters, I think is the name of her book. It's a very big thing. So we were working very hard to get our stage upgraded a little bit with new lights and so on. So mostly my time is spent there. And then edwardsoperahouse.com is where you can see what we're doing. And we also have Facebook. Personally, I don't use Facebook. I don't use social media. I don't do anything, but I am a singer-songwriter, and I spend a lot of time doing writing, including now I'll be working on songs. The grant I just won for myself has to do with writing songs having to do with the North Country. So we are, the town was founded on a zinc mine in the early, mid 1800s that closed in the 70s. My class went from 40 students in a rural area to 13 students. And then it's a dying mining town, basically, with a really awesome opera house. So I'll be writing about my family. I'm sixth generation in this house that I'm in now. And my family's been here for a very long time. And, I'm very grounded here. So I'm looking forward to writing some songs about this place. So that's about me.
That's so exciting. And Maureen, man, I haven't seen you since like the pre-pandemic of it all. And you are busy. What do you got coming up?
It was so nice to hear what Kathleen and AJ are doing. Inspiring. I have 4-year-old twins, and I have a husband who's wonderful, and I support the entire family selling real estate. And real estate is something that I got into 8 years ago on the side. I had been a professional musician for 10 years, and I just said, I'll just add this to my list of skills. And, I made so little as a musician teaching ukulele and performing that I was able to double my income just by selling 5 houses. Mm-hmm. So, and they're expensive here in DC. So I went, but then when the pandemic hit, music kind of took a sideline, and then real estate just took over my life. Fortunately, since the pandemic is sort of winding down, if we can say that, I've been able to perform at the 930 Club and the Birchmere and a bunch of great venues, and starting to perform more. I just was a part of Strathmore's Uke Fest. But before the pandemic, we had a house concert series. Our house concert venue is called Tacoma Ranch. And hopefully we'll be picking that back up again. If you're touring through the DC area, I welcome you to just email me. It's Maureen@maureenandary.com. I just put it in the chat. And I'd be happy to consider you for we do a brunch series. So it's during the day. So if you have an evening concert, you can still play at our house. And we provide brunch. My husband loves to cook, and we sell tickets for $20. And it's cool for us because it's family friendly. So folk artists are really great for that for kids because it's not loud, So I'm happy to be in touch about that. And I have a band called The Sweater Set, and we have an amazing music video that we filmed right before the pandemic, March 7th, 2020, that we're really proud of. And you can see it on our website with our single In Another Life. So that's pretty much it. And lastly, I sell a fair amount of houses to musicians. I would say 30% of my clients are musicians. And I'm with Compass, which is a national brokerage. So if any of the musicians out there at NERFA have any questions about purchasing real estate, how to get on the right track to buying your first home, I'm available and happy to be available for a free consultation. Just email me, and I can help you find a good realtor in your area and kind of help you get prepared to do that. So.
Right. Schedule C folks need houses too.
Yes, they do.
Well, yeah, and I have advice for that, for your Schedule C.
I know. Guys, I cannot thank you enough. The only other thing I would want to do before we can wrap this baby up, did we not get to anything, or was there something like over the course of the conversation where you went, oh yeah, that you want to make sure gets into this before we're done?
The only thing I can think of is adding to kind of what Kathleen said with don't be discouraged about the amount you get. Partial funding is still funding. I always like to say that. Partial funding is still funding. And in the Massachusetts applications, I know that they'll ask you, what will you do if you don't get the full amount? They don't say, what will you do if we don't fund you? They say, well, what if you don't get the full amount? Then you have to have a backup plan. So you're already thinking about that. Mm-hmm. If you apply for $3,000, like Kathleen did, and get $2,600, that's okay. You're still mostly funded. That's amazing. And take the victory. Don't be discouraged. The other thing is, I will quickly share a story of when I was not funded, which was actually last year, before I was on the board, before I was part of the Cultural Council myself. So now I can't apply. But I applied for the House Concert Series because the year before we had a very busy season and we were just sort of getting back to it. I had a lot of people coming in from the city. I wanted to pay them. I pay people out of my own pocket. I usually budget a year in advance so that I have the money to set aside. It's just a way to get back. I applied for a $5,000 grant because I knew the budget was large. And I actually had one of the Cultural Council members in my own town, who I know, write back to me and say, we're really sorry that we can't approve this. Like, first she asked me some questions. I explained, she said, we can't approve this. But then she sent me a handwritten letter, which really helped. And she said, we can't approve you this year, but if you fix X, Y, and Z, we are ready to approve this for next year. So it's a little difficult because now I'm on the Cultural Council, so I can't apply for the same things. But I now have that in my head. It's helped me when helping other people fill out the applications. And please just don't be discouraged when you're told no, because no doesn't always mean no in the world. It means no everywhere else. But in grant writing, it means not right now. Rethink, rewrite, and come back. Try again. That's all it means. You can do this. It's not as scary as it sounds.
Yeah. And I just want to jump in right there and say, both you and Maureen have both said, don't be afraid. I mean, I think it feels like a big hurdle, but it's not. And it's once you get in, once you do it once, you're like, oh, okay, this is okay.
Absolutely. And also do want to mention that there are grants for first-time homebuyers out there, and that's not through arts organizations, but you can email me about those as well. Homeownership might not be out of reach. I find that a lot of artists kind of like write themselves off and think that they can't do it, but you can. And in some cases, you can even use, like if you get an artist fellowship, like I just got an artist fellowship for $10,000 last year, you can use that money for a down payment, partially. So, I mean, a fellowship money you can use for anything. So I just want to encourage, because space is so important. And if you're self-employed, I think owning your home is sort of part of a bigger retirement strategy to begin with. So thanks.
Yeah. No, and one of the underlying things here definitely sounds like grant experience begets grants in other and all things. So I really appreciate that. You guys, you have no idea how much this has helped me. I mean, forget the viewers. I'm going to take the money and run. So Maureen, AJ, and Kathleen, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. I don't want to say bye.
Oh, it's see you later. It's not
been
bye.
Wonderful. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
We hope that you find this panel informative. I know I did. And don't forget, there's an after panel Zoom that we hope you'll take part in.